Lily, let's talk about your work investigating and taking down dark web markets, because I know that's what everyone here is very excited to hear about this. So what are the moving parts that go into a campaign like that? Like, how long is the process, and what are some of the major skill sets of the team that you worked with to achieve these kind of campaigns, from the people actually infiltrating and getting info from the dark web to those that worked on creating evidence and testimony for court?
Yeah, so dark web cases are very unique and have a lot of features that are different from traditional cases. One of the main features is that the criminal players in the dark web case are faceless, right? They're all anonymous.
Yeah.
Right? So that kind of brings in a whole layer of investigative activity that you have to break through that anonymity. Right. Not only is a dark web market anonymous in the sense that we don't know where it's located, right? So where the servers are located, because they're hosted on, it's a hidden service hosted on Tor usually. But also the players themselves, not only are they individually anonymous, they also don't know each other.
Oh, okay,
right?
yeah.
Oftentimes, the co-conspirators, right? Like, let's say you have market administrators, right? These are the individuals that would develop the market, maintain the integrity of the market, provide customer service. It's a whole enterprise. It's like Amazon, right? Amazon has employees and CEO and a COO and a CFO. Same thing with dark web markets, right? Because these are giant enterprises, sometimes billions of dollars worth. And but none of these people know each other. None of these people know who each other is. A lot of times they don't even know where the other person is, their co-conspirator is in the world, right? So it brings in an extra layer of complexity because of that, where in a traditional case where, let's say take a drug case, right? You take a low-level drug dealer, you arrest them, you flip them, then they flip against their source of supply. And then you keep going up the chain until you get to the Sinaloa cartel or whatever it is, right?
Sure.
And then you look at all their, different co-conspirator money launderers, but they all know each other, right? Whether they communicate through phone, they communicate, they send each other, money. A lot of them have met each other in person. In the case of dark web, that's not the case, right? None of them know each other. So we don't have that like step by step.
Yeah.
Where we can flip someone against someone else. And then all of a sudden, now we got to the big guy. No, we have to target the big guy right away.
Interesting.
Right?
Okay.
So,
they couldn't flip even if they wanted to, basically. They're just like, I take orders from dark web guy 2324 or whatever. Yeah.
That's exactly right. And it's very frustrating because, I've taken down many dark web administrators.
Okay.
I would interview them and they would have nothing to say usually about the other co-conspirators, So,
right. Yeah. That's really interesting. Well, yeah, between Bitcoin being the sort of like, autonomous money form, and then dark web markets as this autonomous, you really do feel like you're just like in this sort of like alternate reality or something, I suppose.
Oh, absolutely. Like, first of all, for anybody who's never been in the dark web market, it's mind blowing when you first go on and you see how openly people talk about selling drugs and crimes against children and just everything in the open. Like, they're not afraid to talk about any of it.
Yeah.
And it's like an Amazon for drugs and Amazon for illicit goods, and you have reviews. You have you get five stars. All of that. Reputation building for vendors. It's crazy. It's like a totally different world. But it's, when I first saw it, I was like a kid in a candy store, because in a traditional case, we would need, we depend highly on confidential sources, right? Who are, usually difficult to work with, difficult to obtain, to actually infiltrate a criminal organization, right? Especially a large criminal organization. In this case, we don't need a confidential source. We can do all of our own undercover work, get directly to the target, right? Because that target doesn't know who I am, just as I don't know who they are. They don't know who I am. So it actually takes out a level of complexity, which is dealing with confidential sources, but it also brings in a new level of complexity, which is identification, right? That's a huge part about doing a dark web case. And that can take years. I mean, I've had dark web cases running for 4 years, and these are long-term investigations. We go. Usually, the way I structure my cases with dark web is I look at the different features of the organization, right? Different co-conspirators. One being the administrators of the market. Two being the largest vendors, of course, on the market that are actually selling illicit goods and services, and then mixing services. This is the crypto component, right? Because there's a whole money laundering component. So any mixing services that help obfuscate the flow of funds on the blockchain, and money laundering organizations in general, and entities and individuals that facilitate the money laundering of dark web proceeds. Right. So those are all co-conspirators, right? I look at them as one organization, right? So I go after them as different parts of one organization. Which is interesting. There's so many facets of a dark web case, right? The vendor case is very different from an administrator case, from a mixer case or an exchange or a money launderer case.
Have you seen Work Bites, the new security awareness training series from Infosec? Our team produced this series with 3 E's in mind, making security awareness training entertaining, engaging, and educational. Just go to infosecinstitute.com/free to learn more about this hilarious office comedy. And hey, let us know what you think about it.